Is another conflict looming in the Middle East? Israel's Prime Minister says no, but mixed messages from Tel Aviv and Syria mean the question of war keeps resurfacing. This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Sami Zaidan. Is a new war on the horizon in the Middle East between Israel and Syria, with reports of war preparations mounting in recent months? Israel's Prime Minister Ehud Olmert has again come out and publicly declared that conflict's not on his agenda. But despite Mr. Olmert's conciliatory words aimed at Damascus, behind the scenes, his cabinet said to be making plans for the contingency of war. The latest moves follow rhetoric from both Olmert and Syria's President Bashar al-Assad, claiming they want peace. But realistically, they're at stalemate. They've no diplomatic relations, and their countries have been locked in a legal state of war since 1948. So what's the real situation? Well, let's just take a quick look now at how the land lies for each of the two countries. Syria's strength comes partly from Iran. Together they form one of the strongest alliances in the region. It vies with Israel for regional dominance. At home, al-Assad won a second term in office back in May, but opposition to his Ba'ath party is banned, and he was the only candidate. He also scored a coup with a visit from Nancy Pelosi, US Democrat and Speaker of the House, who met with him in April against George Bush's advice. And what about Israel? Well, although its position in the region is changing, one thing remains the same. Its biggest supporter is the United States, which just 2 weeks ago promised Israel more than $30 billion in military aid over the next decade. Washington also shipped arms to Israel during last year's war with Hezbollah. Despite that, some claim Israel was defeated and left red-faced over its military dominance. The lack of a decisive victory in that war is taking a toll on Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. His approval ratings have plummeted. Many in Israel, including his Deputy Prime Minister, have called on him to resign. Well, joining our discussion today, our guests in Damascus, Dr. AL-ZAIM, Director of the Arab Center for Strategic Studies and former Syrian Minister of Planning. In Jerusalem, Dr. ALON LIEL, a former Director General of the Israeli Foreign Ministry, who has been heavily involved in unofficial talks with Syria. And in Washington, D.C., Mark Perry, the Director of Conflicts Forum. He's also a writer and Middle East expert. If I could start perhaps with Dr. LIEL. Can the Israeli government, still reeling from last year's war with Hezbollah, really be considering a new conflict with Syria?
I think the preparations are in a way a result of the performance or the poor performance of the Israeli army last summer. As you know, there is an investigation going on, and Olmert was already issued a yellow card, and nobody in the Israeli leadership can afford another failure. And this is the reason the army is preparing and all the security establishment is getting ready for another war,
but are
because
they preparing,
another failure will be the end.
Are they preparing for war or taking precautions against it?
You know, I think it's precautions mainly because, first of all, the army has to be ready because we have other conflicts going on too. And I don't think, as an Israeli citizen, I can blame them for preparing a war. What I blame them for is that they are not preparing for peace at all, and it's only preparations for war. And this can obviously lead to only one option, which is war.
All right, let's go and get the view from Damascus, Dr. AL-ZAIM. From Damascus's perspective, could Syria be preparing to attack Israel to start a war, looking at allegations of recent Syrian military maneuvers?
Are you joking, sir? Syria has always been on the defensive. Syria has always tried to recover its rights. It is Israel which has the most powerful army in the region. It's Israel which is endowed with the most modern and destructive weapons, US weapons. It is Israel that has its mighty army, and that has the nostalgia of renewing its past victories. Syria is seeking peace, and Syria is trying to protect its integrity, its territorial integrity, and to recover its Golan Heights. I don't think at all serious to say that Syria is preparing any war. it does not mean that Syria is not preparing itself against an aggressive war. That is illogical. Obviously, Syria has to be ready if it is attacked. The military in Israel have been defeated strategically last year in Lebanon, and they need somehow to regain confidence and to demonstrate to the public opinion that they can do something as they used to do in the past. So that is the real issue. The issue is that whether the Israeli army is going to attack Syria to launch a new military adventure or not.
All right, let's get the view from the United States. Mark Perry, as we're hearing from both guests, neither side seems to be preparing to start a war. Why are we constantly hearing the war talk then?
Well, I think it would be criminally negligent for either government to not prepare for war. This is a notoriously unstable region. The United States has been shipping arms to its allies and recently sent the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of State to Saudi Arabia to sell $40 billion of weapons to our Arab allies. So I think it's not unpredictable that Israel wouldn't prepare for war and Syria wouldn't prepare for war. It would be negligent for them not to. There have been wars in the past, and certainly the region's on a knife's edge. We have a war in Iraq. We have instability in Lebanon. There's certain instability throughout the region. I was happy to hear the Prime Minister of Israel say that there was not a plan for a war against Syria, but it shows just how difficult the situation is where an Israeli Prime Minister or the leader of any nation actually has to say this in public. We should expect that no country would launch a surprise attack on another. It shows you just how unstable the region is.
All right, let's go back to Damascus. In addition to perhaps taking precautions against, as you put it, an possible Israeli attack on Syria, could part of the recent Syrian military maneuvers be to put pressure on Israel to be more forthcoming in peace talks from the Syrian perspective?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that military upgrading the purchase of weapons on one side to some Arab states and the guarantee of military superiority and financial generosity to Israel by the United States on the other, this is what is about military course. The military race is there. Syria is not involved in that at all. I don't think that is the issue at all. I think that the Israelis may feel free, the military may feel free now that Bush is hoping to control the situation a little bit in Iraq and to launch another adventure. After all, he doesn't have anything to lose. Within a short time, he will have to quit the White House, and in the meanwhile, he can take any adventure. In any case, he's not going to run for a new presidency.
Right.
So that might create a new context in which Israel might be given the green light by the United States to attack.
All right, let's take up that point of new context with Dr. LIEL.
Excuse me, sir.
If I could take that point out with Dr. LIEL, or the point that he's raising there is one that's quite commonly believed in the region, the possibility that there could be a possible US confrontation with Iran that could drag countries like Israel and Syria into a conflict. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I want to tell you that it's a pleasure talking with Damascus directly. I never did it before, and I think that all these relaxing statements of the leaders or relaxing messages will not be able to replace direct talks, and I really think that the sides should sit and talk about peace. Only this can change the situation. Regarding your question, I really believe that there is only one person on this globe that can put the sides together in one room, and this is George Bush. And if George Bush will not give the green light to somebody high in the American administration to enter the room, we will not have peace talks. And as long as we will not have peace talks, the danger of war will be hanging over our heads. I'm not sure we'll have a war, but it will be above,
Right.
hanging all the time, and definitely can deteriorate into a war.
Well, if there was to be a confrontation between Syria and Israel, it wouldn't be the first time. They've clashed, of course, in major wars in the past, 1948, 1967 and 1973. The most recent conflict between Israel and Hezbollah in July last year saw Damascus lend the group substantial help. Moreover, there were widespread fears that Syria would be sucked into the conflict. Israeli aircraft attacked an alleged Palestinian guerrilla training camp on the outskirts of Damascus back in October of 2003. Syria, of course, said it was a refugee camp. And back in 1982, Israel destroyed more than 80 Syrian aircraft as well as scores of armored vehicles in violent clashes in Lebanon. Well, this occurred at a time when both sides were jostling for influence in Lebanon as sectarian division erupted into civil war. Well, we'll have to take a short break there, but stay with us. In a moment, we'll be asking what the prospects of a breakthrough and a real peace are.